Hey everyone, hope you're doing well out there. We're at episode 6, and this time my guest was Nise The Nymph. She's an artist, producer, and lyricist, as well as one of my favorite people I've had the pleasure of working with. I'm so excited for you to hear this unique perspective from Nise, and I'm so thankful that you are here with us. I could not do it without you. And with that being said, here's Nise. Nise, I'm super glad we were able to make this happen.
Me too. Amen.
It's crazy to think, but we've known each other for, I don't know, maybe 3 years now, maybe even more. Uh, and over that time, we've both grown and learned so much about our passions.
Mm.
Especially you've been pushing yourself as a lyricist, a producer, an artist, and it's been wonderful to watch.
Thank you.
What's been even more inspiring has been watching you push your friends and loved ones to be better artists and develop their skills as well, especially in photography and production. You are genuinely one of the most impressive lyricists, artists, and producers I've ever heard or met, and I'm very thankful to have met you.
Thank you.
Your newest single, Why, the Mellow Bounce version 2, from Shy's latest album, New Era, New Aura, is out everywhere music is sold.
Mm-hmm.
Nise, thank you for taking the time to be here.
Yeah, of course. Always.
So I want to start kind of at the start a little bit, like of your beginnings.
Mm-hmm.
So you started your music journey with an obsession with magic piano at around 9 years old. How did that initial spark evolve? And can you tell us more about what magic piano is for people who don't know?
Yeah, for sure. So, just to get into what it actually is, it's basically an app on your phone where you get to choose different songs, and they give you like a scale with like different glowy like button things, and you just press them and you play the song or whatever using the piano or whatever. Um, I kind of just got into that because, my sister had been doing music for a long time, and she started playing guitar, and I just have always like had an admiration for sound, um, but I couldn't actually play, so I was like, I'm gonna just download an app to feel like I'm playing,
Right.
and I would be very impressed with myself. So since then, I just decided to continue further in it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Uh, so so would that start on like just like a cell phone, like
Yeah.
an iPhone?
Yeah, on just an iPod or like an
Mm,
iPad. You can download it like on the
mm.
App Store or whatever. Um, yeah.
Awesome. I definitely see like a lot of people from that era, and myself included, being able to get started recording like near professional sounding tracks on an iPhone
Yeah,
starting out. I think that's such a good way to have like democratized that sort of
for sure.
technology and be able to like have like a Focusrite or something that you just put in your dorm room and be able to make a hit record.
Definitely.
And so
Yeah.
that's a really special part of growing up in this like unique it's part of time where
Yeah,
we were
for
able to
sure.
record
For
on our
sure. I
cell
actually
phones.
started producing on my phone on
Mhm.
GarageBand.
Oh yeah, that
Um,
GarageBand app is really, really good.
I was very
Yeah,
fascinated by it. I was
yeah.
like, wow, I can. Whenever I got my first iPhone, I it was on there because it already comes like on the phone or whatever when
Mhm.
you have like Apple or whatever. So I just remember when I was a little kid, I would often go to the Apple store before I got a actual phone,
Mhm.
and I would just play with the little displays and be on GarageBand, just messing around with it. And then that Christmas, I asked my mom like, I need an iPhone, like I need one,
Yeah,
I really really need one. So I got one, and yeah, it just further from there.
yeah. I knew it was real when I was able to plug like there's an adapter for the
Mhm.
lightning cable,
Yeah.
and it was a 1/4 inch cable, so I could plug a guitar in, and
Hmm.
I would help like my friends track their band's music on my
Yeah.
phone, which was
Yeah.
just insane.
It's wild.
Yeah. Um, who were some of your favorite artists growing up as a kid?
I really really liked Isaiah Rashad, um, Mac Miller. It's on the tat on the
Oh
arm.
yeah.
J. Cole was probably one of my biggest influences whenever I first started.
Mhm.
rapping. But I didn't start rapping until maybe like 3 to 4 years into producing. So I would really looked up to J. Cole in that aspect because he produced a lot of his music.
Right.
Kanye West as well.
Larry Fisherman
Yeah,
at
Larry
that time.
Fisherman. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. That those were. I remember watching those like rhythm roulette videos
Oh, yeah.
as like a young kid and seeing like Jake One like go in there and pick records blindfolded and just make heaters like or what's his name? I can't think of it.
My favorite's Ninth Wonder.
Ninth
That
Wonder,
episode, Big Crit episode's
Big
insane.
Crit. That's who I yeah,
Big
that's what I was
Crit, where
talking
he
about.
breaks his own Rhapsody.
But yeah,
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
That's
it was
insane.
like I was just in awe of like how people were able to just make something out of nothing. I think that's what life is kind of all about, like
Yeah.
using what you got when you got
Just
it.
using these small elements that don't
Yeah,
seem to have any relation to each other,
yeah,
almost randomly putting them together, making something beautiful
yeah. No,
out
it's
of it.
dope. It's dope. It's amazing. Um, so yeah, I was really inspired by a lot of producers at first, but I would say like my top three. I can't even say top three, but like Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole, Isaiah Rashad, Schoolboy Q,
Mhm.
um, Jay Z, Kanye West, just really like lyrical artists that aren't afraid to be different
Yeah.
or original. You know what I mean? Because I think that's what artistry is about. I feel like nowadays there's a lot of artists that have a sole purpose in their head to sound like someone else,
Yeah.
and they wonder why they don't get anywhere. Because it's like
Right.
there's already one of those. We don't need to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just best to be original. And I think all of those artists taught me that at a very young age, for sure.
Yeah. That's huge
Yeah.
because, yeah, there's, as you said, you didn't use this word, but like there seems to be lots of trends in
Yeah.
rap. There'll be something going on in drill that everybody wants to hop on
Yep.
for a while, but it really all kind of blends together. It's like r- recognizability, or like when a certain artist comes on and you know it's them within a few seconds
Yeah.
because they've curated that sound so uniquely. That's was really special and sought after, and
Yeah.
that's what I think we want as members of the audience, just as well as like
Yeah.
peers. But like when you're in the audience, you really want to have a unique, special experience and just know like this is genuinely this
Yeah.
person,
For sure.
and have that just raw emotional relationship with them. Like you can feel so close to all these people you've never met
Yeah.
because they have presented themselves in such like a, once again, like raw and vulnerable way,
Yeah.
that you feel like you've been invited to their soul,
For sure.
and you're playing a part of that. Where if it's a trend kind of music, you don't feel like you really know that person. You know what they were trying to do, but they
Exactly.
haven't opened themselves up to be totally
For sure.
accepted by their
It's very
audience.
ingenuine to me.
Right.
I've never really been the type of person like I feel like I started like when I first started rapping, I did like little remixes or whatever to certain beats. But I think in my head I tried my hardest to make it so original that the beat didn't even really matter.
Yeah.
Like to people that were listening to it, it kind of just was like, wow, like her words are they cut. Like,
Hmm.
like we're not this doesn't sound like anybody else. Like from my tone, from the things that I talk about, I feel like I talk about a lot of things that people are scared to say
Yeah.
and share to people. But the stuff that you're scared to say is usually what a lot of people are battling. And so when you hear someone else say it, it's like, oh my God, like someone hears me. Like, I feel like a lot of
Hmm.
my listeners feel heard from me because, we all go through the same thing, but just in different fonts, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering about your unique situation as for a lot of your songs, you're the sole composer, lyricist, and producer.
Mm-hmm.
But on some songs, they're produced by somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
So how's your writing process change when you seem to have like a theme? I feel like, do you seem to create a theme through your beat first?
Mm,
Well, and I know when you have a beat that you get somewhere else, you have to kind of vibe check the beat a bit
yeah,
and be like, what is this beat talking about? Because you
yeah,
can't just superimpose whatever you want to write about on some beat that
right,
doesn't relate to what that feeling is.
right.
And so I'm wondering how do you approach it differently when it's a beat that you've made, and how do you approach it differently with a beat that somebody else has made?
I think whenever I'm listening to beats, it's all about how it makes me feel whenever I'm listening to it, and that's how I approach it. So if it's like a beat from like somebody that I don't know, I think that I still write based off of how I feel, but I think it's a bit less vulnerable because I don't know the person and what their intentions were whenever they were creating the beat. Whereas
Mm,
whenever I create the beat, I know exactly like how I'm feeling whenever I'm creating it. I know my intention on why I'm creating it. I know exactly where I want to go with it, but I don't rap on like I have so like oh my god, like numerous amount of beats that I've never used before and I probably never will. Um just because how I felt in that way may not necessarily be how I feel now. So it's harder to approach it in the same way, if that
mm.
makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Um, is there a specific genre or era you love to explore when you're digging for samples?
Yeah, definitely 70s. I
70s?
love 70s, 70s soul or like 80s Japanese pop.
Oh yeah.
Those are my two like that's what I'm looking for.
Mm,
I've also recently been listening to like vaporwave
mhm.
um playlist to find samples because I really like the it's almost like sort of a cloudy sample and then
Yeah,
flipping it and turning it into like a whole like hip hop beat. Like I think that's super dope. I have some songs that are like that.
that's awesome. Yeah, I feel
Yeah.
like you have like the warmth, that
Yeah.
warm tape feeling from the 70s, and then all the crazy stuff they're doing with gated reverb in the
Yeah.
80s, like those drums.
Yeah,
Like
the drums
somebody
are sick.
figured out gated reverb for drums in the 80s, and they're like, okay, we're putting this on everything.
Yeah.
It's gonna sound awesome.
Yeah, literally.
And I remember you and I had talked about years ago when about jazz from Japan,
Yeah.
and like how some of that stuff was just nuts. And it's
Yeah, like insane.
and so you're saying pop, Japanese pop from what era?
80s.
80s.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
I'm sure there's some
Japanese
crazy
jazz
stuff.
too. Like Japanese like music from like the 70s to the 90s was just like they were tapped in. Like I don't
Yeah.
even yeah, super 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 cool. And it's not even like music I can understand. I'm just literally listening to it for like feeling. You know what I mean?
Mhm. So looking back at the release of Positive Pain, your latest LP, what were some of your favorite moments in creating the album and the promotion around it?
I would say I feel like majority of that album at the time I was working at Shahar Cafe and I was the cook and we had this big ass like JBL speaker at the top and they were like you can play whatever you want like we don't care. So I often spent most of my shifts like just sitting down and like writing that entire album. Um
Mm,
so thinking back is like damn like that'll be a story to tell one day like I literally wrote the whole not the whole album but damn near the whole album while I was at work
wow.
working a job that I knew wasn't really my passion or wasn't really something that I wanted to do
Hmm.
besides making money.
Right.
Um, I'd say my favorite part about the promotion aspect of it was definitely getting ashtrays and lighters done and selling them. Since the first time I've ever done like merch and stuff, and so
Hmm.
I was really motivated because I believed in the album so much, and I was like, we can like capitalize off this. Like, let's make ashtrays, let's make totes, let's make lighters. Especially since I've always incorporated getting high in my music,
Right.
so I thought that it would have stuck for sure. Just because it's like if you listen to me, you most likely smoke weed.
Right.
So, you need a lighter with my face on it or an ashtray or, you know, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is really fun.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, being able to have unique merch. Yeah,
Yeah.
merch is like unique as your music,
Yeah.
Um, so when you're creating a beat, how do you decide when to stop adding elements to the beat? Like, how do you know when like all the ingredients are in there? Is there something you look for? Is it just a feeling you get?
I think it's just a feeling, honestly. Like sometimes sometimes the sample is so like great
Hmm.
and then I'll add drums and I'll add like so many different elements and then I'll solo out each element on the sample and like slowly like gradually unmute the other elements. And
Hmm.
that's kind of how I can tell like okay, yeah, this maybe we could do without this,
Right.
you know. Or but most of the time it's just like feelings, just feeling like okay, this is finished. Like next one. Let's do the next
Yeah,
one. You know what I mean?
absolutely.
Yeah.
So what role so you what role does storytelling come into your or play in your production process? Like we talk about storytelling a lot with lyricism, but
Hmm.
when it comes to production, does that have a place there?
Sometimes it does. Sometimes like I'll find a sample that really makes me feel nostalgic or sad or it makes me think about past things that I've been through that I haven't talked about or that nobody necessarily knows because I don't really publicly speak on what I do or go through that
Mhm.
much. And so when I find like a sample or if I'm playing like piano and I'm like, damn, like this is very like melancholy. Like I wanna tell a sad story.
Mhm.
Or I wanna visually or like physically gain the listener's attention by just the beat. Cause I know like with some frequencies and like the way music is, like it messes with your seven chakras. So there's certain frequencies or whatever that will touch your chakra, whichever one. And I want to bring all that out. And I've heard from many people that whenever they listen to my music, it's a feeling of like a body high.
Mhm.
And that's kind of what I want to that's kind of what I want. It's kind of the goal. Touching those seven chakras and a lot of that has to do with the frequencies in the beats that you choose or make.
Wow, I hadn't thought of that. I thought of how like how music affects us in ways we don't see, like a like extreme examples, like how can like when if we can sing at a frequency that makes like a champagne glass break, like what does that do to like the smallest particles and
Right.
that make up our us like developmentally,
Yeah.
and what are the what how is music affecting us on like this macroscopic level that we
Yeah.
can't we don't understand.
Yeah. It's
And so I
powerful.
guess that could be that could go into chakras, and I guess
Yeah.
certain resonant frequencies that
Yeah.
resonate with those chakras.
Yeah.
I don't know much about that, but that's something that I've definitely thought about. It's like,
Hmm.
yeah, at a young age seeing the champagne glass burst, I'm like, well, what is that doing to our brain?
Yeah.
Like when it makes us feel this certain way, like
Yeah.
uh and so that is an interesting way of approaching that. I like that.
For sure.
Um, so I did want to touch on this because you had mentioned it. You found yourself do you find yourself writing at work the
Hmm.
most?
I wouldn't say the most. I think that I'm not really an artist that writes every day. I write whenever I have something to say or whenever I can get out what I have to say cuz there's sometimes that I do really want to write a song and I do know exactly what I want to say but I don't know how to put it on paper.
Hmm.
And so there'll just be bursts of like inspiration, I guess. Like the other day I was driving maybe not the other day, but like maybe 2 months ago, I was driving and I was on my way to work, and I was like, damn, just listening to beats. And I literally pulled my car over and was like, I have something to say. I have to write it.
Mm,
So there's just times where um I have like a whole verse in my mind, and if I don't write it right then it'll go away. So I just write
yeah.
whenever I really have something to say and I really want to express it, because it always feels better once you like. They say like when you journal things that you feel or whatever, it makes it feel more real and alive when it's on paper.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's how I feel about writing music.
Yeah, there's something very mysterious and beautiful about that
Yeah,
where you have to pull over to write it down
yeah,
because if you don't write it down, it'll escape you.
yeah,
I describe it a lot as like a when you have a dream or an idea, and it could be this idea you think is so brilliant that you don't have to write it down. You're like, it's so good, and I'm
yeah,
so emotionally affected by it that I know I'm going to commit it to memory. And then, of course, some time passes and it totally escapes you, as
yeah,
if it wasn't yours in the first place.
yeah. And then usually, eventually, you'll see the same idea and someone else did it.
Right,
And so it's
right.
like,
Did it go
damn,
to them? It's like this thing that drifts
yeah,
on this like wave of consciousness, and it's
yeah,
like you can pick it up and grab it, but like it's if you let it go, you think it's a part of you, and then
yeah,
it just
no,
goes away.
it'll find somebody else for sure if it's
Yeah.
if it's really a good idea. That's why I'm so adamant on like when I find a sample, I'm sampling it then and there. If
Yeah.
I really feel like it's like, wow, like this is because you can be scrolling on Instagram and then not sample it
Mhm.
and hear the same sample in somebody else's song. That's happened to me before, countless of times.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm very adamant on like when I have an idea or when I have a song or when I'm like I'm gonna drop an album and this is
Mhm.
exactly what it's gonna be about. This is exactly what it's. I'm very adamant on doing it right then and there
Mhm.
for sure.
If there was a pro version of Who Sampled, you'd probably be a subscriber,
Oh yeah,
I'm sure.
for sure.
Could you share a moment where a particular sound or technique you developed became a signature part of your musical identity?
I would say sampling for sure. Like I said before, I at a young age watched Genius. I think it's called Deconstructed.
Yeah.
Rhythm Roulette, and I remember when I was either 13 or 14, I watched the documentary that J. Cole made, and he's on the tour bus making the beat to Power Trip,
Yeah.
and I was literally like flabbergasted, and I was like, I'm gonna try to do that. I'm gonna try to um take things and make them my own
Mhm.
and curate them based off of what I feel like it should sound like. So yeah, I would say a core memory would be that, and the reason why I started sampling. I honestly sample more than I play on
Okay.
piano
Yeah.
for sure. I like chopping samples because of those types of videos too. Ninth Wonder and like seeing them just like go crazy or like finger drumming and stuff. I was always very interested in that at that point in time, and I
Mhm.
always have, honestly.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I love that we're able to do that now in music where we can just make drums in all sorts of ways. Now
yeah,
we can even do it with our voice. I'm sure you've
yeah,
seen that where you can kind of like sing the drum pattern,
yeah. It's
and
insane.
yeah, that is so cool. As and doing it with different instruments now too.
Yeah,
It's a whole new world
it
of
is.
production.
It is for sure.
Uh, Especially now, Logic just came out with a new update, and I got it probably an hour after it dropped because I'd heard about it.
Yeah.
But they have a stem out like it's an AI plugin
Hmm.
in Logic now where you can take any song ever and it will stem out the song for you. So first thing
Really.
I did is I went to like Thriller on Michael Jackson album and I just put it in and it separated out the drums, the bass, the keys, just his
Wow.
voice.
I never knew. I didn't
And
know that.
it just came out like maybe 2 weeks ago.
That's
And
nuts.
it has absolutely I've been using like I think there's one called Mosius that
Mhm.
Dave Will Chris had put me on to
Yeah.
that I'd been using for like emergency situations when we maybe had like a band lab recording and that's the only version of the beat we have, so we got to take the vocals off.
Yeah.
And so we'd use it for those emergency situations, but it didn't really work too well. This
Mhm.
works very well. It's like really impressive, and
Nice.
it definitely opens up this whole new world of like not only can you sample from anything, like get the old dusty
Yeah.
record off and like blow off all the
Yeah.
dust, put it on and record it into Logic, and Logic's AI will stem it out for you.
That's
So you
amazing.
can
Cause
now
I know, like,
go.
sometimes whenever I sample certain things, the especially, like, listening to older music, they
Mhm.
didn't obviously have the resources that we have now, so
Of course.
sometimes it's the drums are way too loud,
Mhm.
and you can't really hear, like, the part that you really wanna sample, you know what I mean? Or,
Yeah.
like, you can't do drums over the drums or whatever,
Yeah.
so that's really nice to know.
Yeah,
For sure.
and before flex time, there was in some of the older recordings, they weren't exactly on
On
time.
beat,
They
yeah.
didn't have a metronome going, or they weren't, they didn't. And so there'd be moments where producers be, pulling their hair out
Yeah.
in the '90s because they'd be like, "This is perfect," but it's just it falls off beat
Yeah.
because it's not. They didn't do it right. But now we
Yeah.
got flex time and all these really great tools that we can use to kind of cheat a little bit, just
Yeah.
like
For
add a little
sure.
magic to it.
For sure. I love that. It's amazing. Especially since I use Logic. That's like the number one DAW I use. So
Yeah.
definitely gonna update my shit when I get home.
Oh, absolutely. Check it out. Yeah, let me
Yeah.
know. Yeah, let me know. I'll walk you through it. I just know producers. I remember when it first came out, I was like, producers all around the world just woke up to this like crazy new tool that
Hell
because I
yeah.
know I can't imagine how many songs are on the hard drive where it's like this is a great sample, but like there's the vocals up on this
Yeah.
part, or like they can't isolate the drums because someone was like the drum part or the bass part is perfect for this, but we just can't get it isolated.
Yeah.
And now this new tool is dropped where it's like now that bass part in that Aretha Franklin song that you've
Yeah.
been always wanted to do, now you can isolate it.
That's fire.
It's insane. So I foresee us getting a lot of really crazy samples in the next few months
Hell
just
yeah.
off of that tool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's really neat. That's neat to know.
Mm. So you've mentioned your family's support in the past and how important that is for you, and especially your older sister who's a musician. How has her support influenced your music, like as you've grown?
I would say I've just always been the little sister that just watches her play guitar
Hmm.
and watches her go to showcases and sing, and so I've seen her growth like more than anybody else has, like behind the scenes. And she's really evolved into like this amazing like songstress, and that's it's really inspired me. Especially since she supports me because I'm like her biggest fan. So like it's like I'm honestly like one of your one of the famous people that you like really look up to, and they're like giving you the nod, like yeah, like the nod of approval.
Hmm.
That always makes me feel great whenever she says that to me because I think of her in such a big way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that is really a huge deal when somebody you respect as a musician is like, yeah, gives you that nod, as you said,
Yeah.
saying like, you've got it, just
Yeah.
keep going.
Yeah. For sure.
So, and we've seen you perform every now and then in New York, and then performing in Louisville. What would you say the difference in like shows and the culture of shows are like, uh, difference wise between Louisville and New York when it
Um,
comes to the hip hop shows?
Polar opposite for sure.
Polar opposite.
I wouldn't say in a good or bad way. Um, I think that Louisville shows are sort of like hit or miss in the way of like nobody's gonna go if they don't really if you don't really have like a name, if that makes sense. Like nobody's
Mm.
gonna be like, oh, like I feel like Louisville people are like, oh, I'm not paying $20 to watch somebody that I don't know, you know?
Mhm.
And I feel like in New York it's like there is like that's like the town of hip hop. So
Yeah.
they just go to shows, like it doesn't matter if they don't know anybody. Like they didn't know me and they came and
Mhm.
I was on the flyer, you know? Um so I think I've made a name in Louisville enough for people to want to go. But before when I first started, it was kind of like you know, we ain't who is this? We're not going to her show and giving her $10 or you know paying her. But whereas in New York, I think they respect hip hop on a very different level. Not saying that Louisville doesn't, but it's just very it's very different, very different.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
As a introvert myself, performing can be a daunting and challenging task,
Mm.
especially when it's tough enough to try socializing at the show. Asking for a friend, how do you navigate the anxiety that comes with performing music?
How do I navigate things?
The anxiety
Oh, the anxiety.
of performing.
Honestly, I've been doing them for so long now that it's kind of like muscle memory at a point. I think that I get the most anxiety with talking to people after it,
Yeah.
and navigating it is very very difficult.
Mhm.
Because it's almost like you know I'll do a show and I'll have so much confidence and so much like you know like you would think I'm like this friendly, like happy
Mhm.
go lucky person. And I am like in some point, but I really don't like talking to people.
Mhm.
I'm not gonna lie. So, and people naturally want to come up and talk to you and want to tell you how good you did, and then they have questions. And, you know, I think the best way to navigate through that is just to be gentle and genuine, honestly. You can't really get out of it. And I've kind of come to terms with that, like just with the career that I'm you know, pursuing.
Mhm.
Kind of have to talk to people,
Yeah.
and yeah. So I've kind of just really, I don't know, I just do
I
it.
got you. I got you. And now that we've covered that, the anxiety inducing aspects, what do you enjoy the most about performing?
um, I enjoy the fact that I can share my gift
Mhm.
to a group of people, and it almost feels to me as very spiritual. I enjoy like the fact that people pay attention and all of their eyes are on me and you'll see like I would say like my favorite part is being able to turn different ways and look at different people in the crowd and everybody has different reactions.
Yeah.
Like I remember I think it was either the No Name performance or it was my second headline show at Z Bar and I'm just looking at everybody and I'm looking at the left and I see this girl and she's just like the biggest smile on her face. I had no idea who she was. She was just like smiling like from ear to ear. And then I look in the middle and I see a girl with tears running
Oh
down her
my gosh.
face. And then I look at the right.
Mhm.
Like it's just different, like, you know,
Mm.
cuz like I feel like music affects people in very different ways, like depending on who you are and what your story is and what you resonate with. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So I'd say my favorite part is that is being able to like see people and see how they're reacting to this song that I wrote with my like entire soul. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah.
That's awesome. That being able, yeah, seeing the wide variety of emotions
Yeah.
throughout the crowd is just it can be very intense. It's a roller coaster, really.
Yeah, it's very intense.
Yeah.
It's very spiritual,
Yeah.
very there's also other people that won't move and they'll just be like, you know, like
Yeah.
it's
Absolutely.
just it's very different and I enjoy that. I enjoy seeing how my music affects people in different ways.
Yeah, me too. I think that's one of the biggest gifts about live music is that that instant reaction, uh, uh, and that catharsis with the audience as well.
Yeah, for
Like
sure.
when you put out a song digitally, or just out there into the world, just kind of like, all right, I pressed the button, it's
Yeah,
out. And you don't get to like be there for people
for
experiencing it, like on
yeah,
their
for the
ride to
reaction.
work, listening to their song, or when they just play it on their phone real quick to listen to it.
Yeah,
And so you kind of get to see the culmination of all of those moments
yeah,
in a live
exactly.
setting. So you describe your music as soul music that can be felt by anybody with a soul.
Mhm.
What do you hope your listeners feel or take away when they listen to your music?
Um, I want my listeners to feel relieved for one, because I know like life gets so difficult, and like a lot of the times you feel like you have this weight like on you,
Mhm,
and my main goal is to take that weight off of you for 3 minutes,
mhm,
make you feel relieved and heard and understood and almost saved. Like, you know what I
mhm.
mean? Like, because I feel like a lot of the times, like, my music is very much so therapy. It's very therapeutic. And I say a lot of things that a lot of people need to hear. Like, I think one example is definitely my song Change Yourself. And I wrote that because I needed to hear it. But I
Right.
also knew that, there's so many other people out here that battle with depression, with addiction, with loss, grief, all this stuff that, puts them in this cycle of bad decisions and wrongdoings. And sometimes you need somebody to just be like, get up, like
Yeah.
change yourself. Like you need to do the work. If I feel like a lot of people, including myself, whenever I wrote that song, I always complained about my life and about how nothing was ever going right for me and nothing was ever this, and I've been following this dream and nothing's ever persevering, nothing's ever happening. And one of my friends was like, you can't be complaining about your life when you're not working hard enough. You're and at the
Mhm.
end of the day, so if you want your shit to change, you got to change yourself. So I kind of just want to be that friend to my listeners, and let them know like what they may not want to hear, but they need to hear. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great way of putting it. Um, Outside of music, I know you have interests in nature, botanical gardens, photography,
Mhm.
film. Um, how have these developed over time, and what is your current favorite medium outside of music to express your creativity?
Um, Honestly, like I've really been trying to gain a sense of nature and like being outside and being one with myself and nature. And but I would say my favorite thing media wise right now is honestly drawing. I like doodling, like just
Mhm.
drawing different cartoons and stuff. I want to hopefully make my own comic book one day. Um but also I really want to get into graphic designing and media art, like graphic art, album covers or whatever. And I've always been interested in that. I've actually made I think like three or four of the covers that I have. So I really enjoy that. I enjoy that aspect. But yeah, honestly, I really have been just focusing on music because I'm trying to drop an album. And whenever I focus on too many different things at a time, I'll stop doing one thing and just focus on the other one,
Yeah.
and then I'll be like, oh shit, like I haven't gotten my album finished because I've
Right.
been doodling.
Right.
So I really haven't been um really in tune with those aspects of myself and those particular hobbies as of now, but I want to definitely get back into all of that. for sure.
Yeah, I think we all can relate to starting a bunch of projects and how
Yeah,
fun that feels, but like having to see them all the way through is like it's really hard, and
yeah,
sometimes you kind of lose that feeling that you had of inspiration when you were
right,
starting the thing, but you're like, I know this still has value.
yeah,
I'm just like not feeling like
yeah,
that, like Casey calls it turning like the faucet on. Sometimes
yeah,
like the that faucet of emotion is like no longer like if you're writing like a breakup song or
yeah.
something, you really kind of have to be in that space,
You do.
like like a or the opposite, like a
Mhm.
love song. You know, you can't be going through a breakup and write a love song because
Exactly.
that's the last thing you're feeling. So you have to be in that space somewhat. So
Yeah,
I think we should really allow ourselves to like be able to just file these songs in places where it's like,
yeah,
oh, I'm feeling this way today. Like I can approach this project and not feel bad about uh it just kind of sitting there for a while. Like as
yeah,
long as I think just we know and tell ourselves like we're not gonna let it collect dust.
yeah.
I'm not in that space right now. I'm gonna be more productive and better at
Right,
this one thing
right,
that I'm currently focused on.
for sure.
What advice would you give young producers that are looking to ensure that each track that they produce has its own unique sound and identity?
Um, follow your heart, follow your soul. Um, when something feels good, it feels good.
Hmm.
Um, and don't ever let other people's ears discourage you. I think whenever I was younger, the main reason I started rapping was because I was mad that people didn't want to rap on my beats. And it discouraged me in a way, and it made me feel as if my strong suit wasn't producing but rapping. um because I listened to people and I got upset and low key in my feelings whenever I would send people beats and nobody ever wanted to rap on them or write
Hmm.
to them. But part of making a beat is confidence. Because when you
Yeah.
feel like shit, like when you don't feel like yourself, it's hard to make an original beat. You know what I mean? And that has, some sort of originality.
Hmm.
So I would definitely say don't. You know, everyone's ears are different. Make what you feel good about. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
I heard just something really simple a long time ago, and it sticks with me. But it's one of the hardest things to keep reminding myself of. And if it sounds good, it sounds good.
Yeah,
And that's still so hard sometimes because you're like,
for sure.
well, what about the levels though? Like,
Yeah,
is it good though? Because I think, and so you're like, but if I tweak it, will it sound better? It's like
yeah,
you always have these questions, but it always comes down to, but does it sound good though? And
yeah,
so, yeah,
for sure.
that's a really great thing to because we can get lost in the numbers, especially when we're in the software and we're like
Absolutely.
it's sometimes that soul can get lost when you're like, well, I remembered for a while I would kind of when I first started I wanted everything to be like even numbers.
Yeah,
And so I'd always go to like even if the volume should probably be 17, I put on 16 or something
yeah,
like that. And just I started doing certain kind of meditative things where I would close my eyes and then scroll like
yeah,
the digital uh levelers, and I'd be like, okay, now I'm starting to get like
yeah,
what the real sound is here.
yeah, for sure.
What are some of the key elements in a track that make a song stand out to you, like the most?
Um, Definitely the drums, but I'd say like if we're talking like kick, snare, hat, I would say the percussion, the perks that you use, the little different like sound effects, and I think that that's what makes uh like production come to life, and also it brings out the originality in it, like when you use different sounds like doorbells or like
Oh yeah, your
like
washing machine, of course.
yeah, like
Yeah,
something like that, like something that you've never heard of before. I think that Shy is really, really, really good at that, like adding different hints of things. Like he'll use his voice, he'll use like just different things, like so yeah, I would say like the percussion that you use, the perks, the background sounds, the
Mm.
just the little things that you add in between, like a drum, like a kick, a
Yeah.
snare, a hat, because all those things, are they got to be in there.
Yeah.
Like every song has them,
Mhm.
808, but the perks that you use is like different. That's how you can really make a beat stand out, in my opinion.
Yeah. For me, sometimes it's a melody. I think the number one things that stand out to me would be the snare drum.
Hmm.
Sometimes when you do something weird with the snare drum, like there's this now, like it was ironic at first, but now it's getting serious fad where drummers in hardcore music are detuning their snare drum to sound
Hmm.
like low, and like an album by Metallica called Saint Anger. And
Yeah,
it's like called the Saint Anger snare drum. It sounds like a dodgeball, like hitting the ground.
yeah, I
Or
think I know what you're talking
it
about.
sounds like, or like people call it a Pringles can or something.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
just when it's done in this really interesting way, or this really niche way, it sounds so cool. It
yeah,
sounds awesome.
for sure.
How do you find inspiration during times of creative block or personal struggle? I know a lot of people have their own ways, either just working through it or forcing it, or sometimes people will go to a certain album or song. How do you approach that situation?
Um, Usually I'll just turn on beats and mumble rap, like
Okay, yeah.
without any words, like just flow, and I'll record myself, and I'll do it to like every beat that comes on, every single beat, and then sooner or later, no matter how long it takes me, like I'll continue to keep doing it, and I'll record all of them or like do voice demos or whatever. So
Mhm,
if I can't write to it at this second, I can play it back and be like, oh, I have like a demo to this, so I know how I can flow.
mhm,
Um, and I'll say like different syllables or different like things that I can be like, okay, I said so I can rhyme it with
mhm,
whatever that is. The majority of the time, I'll just keep doing it, and then eventually, um, a line will pop out because I'm just mumble rapping. So I'll say different things that don't really make sense, but then I'll um, blurt out like a line or something. I'm like, damn, I kind of like that, and then I'll go from there. Because I feel like the hardest part for me is always the first line.
yeah.
Yeah,
It really sets the whole tone.
yeah,
I've been learning that myself. I'm super new to like learning how to do this process, and so I've been doing this thing very similar to it, where I'll like mumble sing to
yeah,
something, and so I'll try to like for like a hook or just how to
yeah,
start something, and so you kind of sing like I know what tone
yeah.
harmonizes with this
Right.
chord. So it's like a piano chord. It's like I know what harmonizes with this, but I'm not sure exactly what to say or what it's. And then it kind of I love it when, like, it feels right when the beat, like, brings it out of you,
Yeah,
and it's like it, like, pulls it out of you. It's like this is it's this very when you're not the producer, it is, like, a very personal thing with that producer.
yeah,
You
for
know, the
sure.
songs that I know one day you'll, curate, like, there'll, like, be a BeatStars account or something that you come
Yeah,
out with all the songs that just weren't quite didn't quite hit the block for you or
yeah,
your close friends, and that can go out there and someone's just gonna hear one of them and just be like, "This person understands me." Like,
yeah.
they
No,
made this
seriously,
for me,
for
and
sure.
I feel like we've all had that moment too where it's like, "This was, like, made for me
Yeah,
in this exact situation."
for
So you're like,
sure,
"Damn, this person really gets me."
for sure.
So I'm really excited for people across the world to feel that with you,
Yeah, me
and
too.
for
I
them to
can't
be
wait.
here. Yeah. So, what message would you say you'd want to convey through your music as a legacy?
Ooh, it's a hard one. I would say honestly, life has its ups and downs, but it gets better.
Mhm.
Over time. And your mistakes do make you the person that you are. Um, so be vulnerable with them and have grace, for yourself and you know, yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a great message. Mm. As a musician, have you ever experienced a dream that presented you with a melody, rhythm, or concept that you later translated into a real world composition? I like asking this question because it's never happened to me, and I'm kind of envious.
Yeah.
Somebody like I had a few people say, "Oh yeah, I was just playing guitar in my dream," and I was like, "That's a really good song." I woke up and I was like, "I still got it," and then
Yeah.
went and wrote it down, and I was like, "Oh, that." But have you ever experienced that?
I actually have. For I have a song. You know it. You obviously recorded it. "Gift of God."
Mm-hmm.
I had a dream that I was in a church choir.
Oh wow.
And that's how I got the melody.
Mm.
Um, I woke up and I was like, damn. You know how like sometimes like you'll remember a dream, but then as you go on about your
Oh
day,
yeah, it disappears.
you don't remember it. And so I didn't remember it. And that night I was looking through samples, and one of the samples popped up, and I was like, this sounds like
Whoa.
what they were singing in my dream. And yeah, I sampled it right then and there, wrote the song right then and there, finished it that night, didn't go to sleep until I
Wow,
did.
that's so great that you found that sample because I was
Yeah,
about to say, thank God we got voice memos on our phones so
I
we
know.
can roll over and
Yeah,
any musician or producer in the world in the voice memos has like an embarrassing one of them going "Na, na, 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 na,"
yeah,
like this just holding on to it for dear
yeah,
life like just have to make sure I get this down in
yeah,
some form and
for sure. I
and
have
get out.
hundreds of those.
And
Hope no one ever
sometimes they're
finds
like
them.
so yeah, I have like really complicated guitar parts I try to like sing into it. And
Yeah,
I'm like, I hope I remember this
yeah,
exactly how it is.
for sure.
If you're just not by your instrument or just not by your MPC,
Yeah,
not able to get it out. But I'm super glad that that worked out for you because
yeah,
I've heard many of the opposite stories too, where it's like it was so great, it was the best song, and I just thought I'd remember it, and it just disappeared.
yeah,
It's like, oh
for
man.
sure.
But as you said, the part I hadn't thought about is you may hear about it on the radio, somebody else who did tune in at the right
Yep,
time, and you're like, that was it. Because I
yep,
feel like that happens a lot with maybe like inventions or something.
yeah,
Like you will think of something and you'll see it somewhere, but also throughout history where like weird things like the telephone was like invented it's simultaneously in like two different parts of the world or like
yeah,
Morse code and like these different inventions seem to kind of like it's this like thing that's introduced to consciousness.
yeah,
I don't know how it works, but it's there seems to be something there to
yeah,
this
for sure,
shared consciousness
for sure,
that we have going on.
definitely.
What is one trick in the studio or in your writing, or in production that you've learned over the years that you wish you knew when you started out? To any young producers out there, any young lyricists out there, any young people who are in the studio for the first time, is there
Mm.
any just like I wish I knew that starting out kind of tricks that would really help people out getting started?
Yeah, like when I first started out, I didn't really know exactly what a song was. And so a lot of my songs were just really long verses, like
Mm,
64 bar verses, and then that's the end of the song. And now that I'm older, I know the different parts of a song, like to where, like for it to be a song, and of course, like there's songs that, are just like super quick, like maybe one verse, one hook. Um, but, like how to write hooks and like how to write catchy bridges and just making the song have different parts to it. I wish I knew that when I first started, for sure.
mm, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just know your basics.
Yeah, for sure.
I I've definitely hit the ground running on things like
Yeah,
videography or photography, being like I I'm excited about it, but I real deal have not gone to like the 101 kind of
yeah,
course
yeah,
yet. But
facts.
I'm so excited. I'm like I want to skip it because
Yeah,
I'm already too stoked to just learn about like only have pieces of stuff I don't know
yeah,
embedded in the majority of things I do know.
yeah,
But you've now I get surprised all the time like using Logic.
yeah,
Like 5 years into using Logic, I'll watch a Logic for Beginners video,
mm,
and there'll be every time there'll be one or two things in there. I'm like, I had no idea that
Yeah,
was a
for
thing. You're
sure.
like, oh my gosh.
For sure. That's how
Uh,
it was with Flex. I didn't figure that out until maybe 2 years into producing, and before I figured it out, like how you were saying, there's some samples that aren't on beat,
mhm.
and so I would pick a sample, and I'm like, oh, this isn't on beat, scratch it.
Yeah, and it's such a shame. Yeah,
Yeah, it's terrible. Like
yeah.
I always think about that. I'm like, damn, man, I could have I missed out on so
Mhm.
many like good beats because I didn't know what Flex was, and then I found it out, and I was like,
Yeah. Shouts out to that, and now
yeah,
Stem Splitter, and
yeah,
whatever the new thing that we're gonna get. I think
yeah,
we could probably talk about like what is the next thing that production needs.
mm,
Like, what is the next thing, and like, definitely being able to use your voice as as a MIDI
mm,
keyboard is huge. You no longer need a physical MIDI keyboard that you have to buy. You can just
yeah,
do it into your phone, into an app using your voice and the
yeah.
microphone. Like that's,
That would be
and
convenient.
then you could say, you do that, then you tell it, okay, quantize it. And then it
Yeah,
quantizes it, and it could use AI to maybe structure it a bit
yeah,
more for you. And then it's like you have now a drum pattern that you just made
yeah.
essentially.
Automatic pitch correction would help a lot too. I feel like instead of like, because I know like some people they have to move the notes like manually,
Yeah.
and so like, I guess this is really like for just recording or like mixers and masters. Um, like just being able to just be like, okay, like you're
Hmm.
on pitch. We didn't have to move anything around. I think that would be really convenient.
Yeah, I think we'll get there with auto tune and with yeah, a dynamic like side chained auto tune,
Yeah,
which I know some of that exists with Antares. I use Antares sometimes too, but it
yeah,
doesn't side chain super well. But there is some neat stuff with like ducking
yeah,
with AI. I have something that dynamically side chains like the vocal, and say like the guitar is
yeah.
usually something in the mix that takes up the same uh EQ space,
Hmm.
the same like hertz range
Yeah,
as the voice. So whenever the guitar comes in, it will, and it hears the voice, it'll duck the guitar dynamically, instead of what I used to do is just like kind of scoop the mid,
yeah,
and just so on everything, and just have
yeah,
a hard scoop, just so the vocal had this like valley that just carved through it. But now it's like, instead of it being a valley, it's like this unique puzzle piece that whenever the voice isn't there, it fills back in again.
yeah.
And then when the voice is present, it cuts out exactly where it needs to be to sit just
Damn.
right, instead of what we'd used to do,
Hell
instead
yeah.
of just hard scoop it because you'll clear some space for it. And so that for production is huge too, because I've seen people do like, well, have a like the bass drum or something, or
Mm.
the kick and the snare kind of duck each other in certain ways that are really neat and dynamic. But in your experience, what is the most subtle yet impactful change you've made in a mix or while writing that made the world of difference in your mind?
Hmm. That's a hard one. The most subtle change. I don't know. Um, I would say maybe there's certain songs where I'll change the beat. And I think that makes a difference with how it makes you feel because it's very like almost kind of bipolar in a
Mm,
way. Like a good example is Gift of God. It starts off very mellow, no drums, and it just kind of just makes you like, feel mellow. And then the drums come in and they're hard hitting or whatever. And so you're like, oh my God, like, like you're going crazy or whatever. And then they cut out again. And then that like very next part is very much different, like a different vibe. So I feel like it's just more like feelings are all over the place. You know what I mean?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it made me think about how you could write. This would be a neat idea, or you just write like a subset of lyrics, maybe
Hmm.
just like a phrase, or maybe just like 8 bars, and you say it you perform those 8 bars under like maybe a minor key,
Yeah.
and so they have this very clear meaning,
Yeah.
or what you'd think is a very clear meaning to it. It's like this is something sad and has to do with the sad thing, but then you say the exact same subset of lyrics over a major key, and it has a
Mm.
completely different feeling, even though it's the same
Damn, that
words and
is
a
a good
whole
idea.
different meaning.
Yeah.
And you just repeat like that in a 16-bar phrase, but you change the instrumentation,
Yeah.
and I think that would be a really cool way to demonstrate like the power of the music behind the words you're saying, because like the
100%.
words are super, they're huge, what you're
Mhm.
saying is everything, but especially our language, it's almost like the inflection of the emotion in the music is
Yeah, for
changed.
sure.
Like when you say like I've heard this little this phrase used, the "I don't know her."
Yeah.
In English, that can have a lot of meanings, depending on where you put the inflection.
Yeah.
So I was like, "I don't know her. I don't know her. I
Yeah.
don't know her."
Yeah.
All of that is different
For
meanings.
sure.
Same set of words, and people learning English are like, "That's why you like this?
Yeah,
That's
no, for sure.
insane."
For
And
sure. I
that's
never
just
thought about that.
the things that we just like take for granted. But it can have that way in music,
Yeah.
where you put the inflection on something here. It's the same subset of words to almost where the words are just the starting line,
Yeah.
and the music is what builds the environment and the setting and the feel and the emotion around everything else.
Yeah, 100%. That's
Uh,
a really good idea, actually. I've never thought about it like that.
um, do you have a certain philosophy that you live by? You say, have you
Um, Not really. Be yourself.
be yourself? Yeah, I like that.
Be yourself. Do what you can.
Do what you can. Do the
Yeah.
best you can. Yeah. I'm still figuring mine out too. I know I want to leave the world a better place than how I found it, or at least not make it worse,
Yeah,
or like maybe make it better than how I found it. Just like
for
when
sure.
that, and I do want to leave. Maybe this, depending on what philosophy you go by, this could be kind of selfish,
Yeah,
but I do want to leave a positive legacy that inspires people to be like, oh, this,
I
you
would
can do
agree.
this,
Yeah,
yeah, or something that, because there are people in our lives that we looked up to. It's like they did that,
yeah.
and I'm inspired by that. Like
Mhm.
especially those. I mean, I could talk about rhythm roulette all day.
Yeah,
I had no interest in producing sampling, but as soon as I saw Ninth Wonder and Big Crit do their thing,
yeah,
I immediately learned how to do it.
yeah,
I even though I knew I wasn't going to be going into it, but I learned how the whole process and how
yeah.
to do it. And I was like, man, when you go into production, it consumes
It
everything.
does.
Like it is so endless. Like art is endless, and so
Yeah.
many everything is like the 88 keys, endless
Mhm.
music, the only so many letters in the alphabet, endless emotion.
Yeah,
Like we have that, but with production, it's I think it's for me the most overwhelmingly like, oh my gosh, there's no end to this. Like
yeah, for sure.
there's it seems like with a project or like one single song, or for me when I'm like trying to get everything together and in place, it's like there's an end point, and so you're like there's a goal to get to, but with
Yeah,
production it's just like there's no
yeah,
time ever for
for
all
sure.
this, and that's what's so beautiful though about it too. Like
Yeah,
it's this o- endless open world
yeah,
of music and possibilities.
for sure.
Do you have any favorite books, authors?
Um, no favorite authors, but my favorite book right now is The Alchemist. I love that book.
Mm,
It is. I'm currently on my like fourth read. Because it just inspires me. It's very introspective, but also it's a story, and
hmm
so there will be certain things in the book that happen. Like this little boy he's a sheep herder, and he has to go and like follow sheep or like herd sheep or whatever, and he finds like different things and different people on his journey that tell him different stuff. And the way I think about it in like such a deeper meaning, because it's almost like I compare it to like your life journey, and
Mm.
the more you meet people, you'll meet a person, and they'll tell you something that could change like how you continue going about your path. You know what I mean?
You're a piece of every single person you've
You
ever met.
are, you are. So, and that's kind of how I interpret the book. So I love it.
Yeah, that is beautiful. Yeah, and whether good or bad, you are part of every person you've ever
Yeah,
met, you
you
know.
are. You
And
100% are.
that's why it's so important to surround yourself with, good people, because
Facts.
you start becoming, you know, something you don't want to be if you're around people you don't like,
Exactly.
And so I think that's super important for young people to hear as well. Is just
100%.
like it really is your environment, it's not if you're feeling depressed, maybe look around the people who you're surrounding
Yeah, look
yourself by.
around you.
Yeah, look around you for
And
sure.
what also like what you're putting into your body, and
Mm,
who
absolutely.
you're investing time in,
Yeah.
it correlates with a lot, but a lot of it is who you surround yourself by,
Yeah,
for sure.
absolutely. So, in your production journey, what is your favorite MIDI instrument that you've found that has just delighted you in some way? Like for me, like it's like the xylophone, or like
Mm,
there's like wind sounds, like it's a wind tunnel
I know
sound,
what you're talking about.
like
Yeah.
those weird stuff in Logic. Like if is there a certain like MIDI instrument that you found that delighted you that you may not even knew existed? There's like tons of instruments. I'm like, I had no idea what a shamisen was
Yeah.
before this, but I know
Yeah,
this
for sure.
shamisen is a really cool Japanese like instrument that I can use.
Yeah. I would say, yeah, like the Asian drum part in Logic is probably one of my favorites. I can't think of the name. I think it's like I think it starts with a P and it's a string instrument.
Okay.
Um, that one is like beautiful to me. Or like Kongs.
Mm.
Really love those. And then also I feel like the synths in Logic are super fire.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I really love
absolutely.
the synths and stuff. Um, but yeah,
It makes me feel like I'm on a spaceship when I
yeah,
open up like Alchemy or something, and
yeah,
I'm
for
like,
sure.
oh my gosh, this is crazy.
Yeah, no.
So I wanted to real briefly touch one last time on AI and your thoughts on it. So imagine an AI collaborator. So we imagine a DJ Khaled situation,
Mm-hmm.
where he sits there and he kind of has the group of producers. He's like, I want the drums sound like this. I want this and
Mm-hmm.
this. So part human, part machine, uh, working together. Would you work with an algorithm that suggests chord progressions or tweaks your mix, or does music lose its magic when it's automated? And what do you think about the future of production when it comes to AI driven like dynamic balancing, music theory, and melody creations? Uh, do you think producers will become conductors guiding algorithms to sculpt the perfect melody?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you think AI just will become a tool on the tool belt for most people?
I think AI for now, since it's still new,
Hmm.
so it hasn't reached its like purpose yet.
Yeah.
So it is very helpful in certain aspects, but I do think that in the next 10 years, it will take the magic out of music because I think it'll be easier
To
to,
get to that place, that
yeah,
magic spot.
yeah, and I
Mm.
kind of look at it as like, damn, I had to work like in 10 years. I'm gonna be like, damn, I had to like sit at a computer for hours and do this
Yeah.
shit,
I
and
imagine, yeah,
yeah,
how people looking at us like recording on our phones. They're
yeah,
like, I had to like go to a place that had a reel to
yeah,
reel tape machine,
yep,
got to put the tape on and run it through, and then
yeah,
go. And if we messed up the take, they had to either throw the tape out or cut
yeah,
that part of the tape out and re-put it in. And
yeah,
uh, when I talked to Casey, he just reminded me like, we have like infinite stems.
yeah,
That's crazy within itself. Like I was like,
yeah.
yeah, I
It's
hadn't
wild.
thought about the infinite stems thing. It's just something we take for granted.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But on the drive over here, I actually heard something that really kind of I resonated with.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that AI, when it comes to music production, will not be like the product or the producer. It'll be a feature within our DAW that will just
Mm.
help us. It'll be like quantization, or
Yeah.
it'll be like when you can adjust like the swing on a drum or something, and
Yeah.
it'll be just something that helps us out. And because I think really when it comes to music, there will be like prompted music,
Mhm.
but there's nothing that I don't think will entirely replace the producer. I do see a strange world where we have like text prompted beats where it's like I want this to sound like Nelly Furtado
Yeah.
and a little flip type beat, and,
Yeah.
and it'll be like I got you, and it'll just like and it'll just
Yeah.
put it out, and then and then maybe you put something else on top of it. But the weird place where it kind of gets kind of actually odd. I think production's fine. I think we're good. Like nothing to worry about there. But I see this weird world where you've heard the AI albums, like your
Yeah.
Weekend and Freddie Mercury album that
Yeah.
drops, and then you're
Yeah.
like,
I think
oh
I'm most
my
scared of
gosh.
that, honestly, because like nowadays people are able to write a whole song and put like Drake or Kendrick Lamar's voice on it, and it sounds exactly like
It
that.
sounds exactly like it.
And I don't want it to
Yeah.
get to a world where they're like, that just seems like it's gonna be a shit show.
I see, people are going to make a lot of weird things. We've already
Yeah.
seen, Patrick Starr sing
Yeah.
every single song that like used to make us cry as a kid. We're like, I
Yeah.
don't know how to feel about this. But the industry level part where you asking some artist that, your label is on your label or your label fucks with, and they're like, we want to do this collab,
Yeah.
and they're out on vacation, but they're audio engineers in the studio. He has the rights to your intellectual property, that is your voice.
Yeah.
And so you get your feature
Yeah.
without him ever or her ever touching a microphone.
Yeah.
And so and you never know.
You never know.
You'd never know. You'd be like, I wonder if he actually spit this. Like that'll be a thing that people say. Like, you think he actually spit this?
Yeah.
Like, do you think she actually sang this, or do you think like it's just like because it'll almost be like a MIDI instrument, like
Yeah.
something. But there is something really unique about that. But that's going to be weird. Like when we have fake features happening,
Yeah.
and I and already we've seen like kind of really the discouraging things like using an artist somebody really looks up to, like Tupac's voice, to like diss them.
Yeah.
That's
Like,
really sad, and it's like how like that could get really dark, like
yeah.
and really personal if
One
it's
hundred
like
percent.
we don't have to stretch our minds too far to think how
Yeah.
that could get really really dark really quick. But
Yeah.
it's just it's evolving minute by minute,
It
and
is.
so there's these beautiful there's this dark side. I think too when what we just talked about when it comes to like how this music could be used to kind of rip people off or
Yeah.
not give them a genuine product. And then there's the one that splits the stems from that 1940 song that we have always wanted the guitar part for, but never
Right.
have been able to get, and now we can get it, and
Yeah.
it's going to like change lives
Yeah. I think it's
for
a
a
useful
positive way.
tool. I think it's a useful tool, but I think if people take advantage of it in a negative way, it could become not so good
Yeah.
for the world. But it's definitely something that is very cool, very like could be very helpful in the future, especially.
hmm Um,
Yeah.
when you're producing, how do you balance and how do you approach the nostalgic lo-fi sound with the really clean hi-fi sound that we're allowed? Like when you get like a really hi-fi,
Hmm.
a modern sounding like bass or 808 that's like sounds great in the car, but then you have this static crackly like sample over it that's
Yeah.
like beautifully nostalgic and warm.
Hmm.
How do you balance that as a producer? And is that somewhere you think about first? Like, I really want this to have this modern sound, or all the way modern, all the way one way or the other? Do you find they always seem to mix? Like, how do you
Yeah.
find that dance like happening in the
I
production process?
always start with the sample,
Mm-hmm.
or with some sort of melody, and then based off of how it sounds, that's how I do the drums or whatever. I also do the drums all together. So like I don't do it one by one by one by one. I do it
Mm-hmm.
like I'm gonna do the kick, then the hi hat, then the snare, then I'm gonna do the kick again, then the hi hat, and the snare, whatever the pattern is. Um, and I mostly just like based off of what I feel like the sample needs drum wise. I have so many like different drum kits or whatever, and I'll just be like, this sounds like a Childish Gambino type of drum or
Mm-hmm.
deal or Smino or Isaiah Rashad or yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. Yeah. Starting with the sample is really, yeah, because that's really the heart of it.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like, it really is such an integral part. It's like, yeah, the
Yeah.
sample. I've heard people starting with drums first and
Yeah.
then stretching a sample to fit them, and so it's interesting to see how everybody. Some people start with the keys,
Yeah.
you know. Uh, I I asked a singer once, like, do you ever start with the lyrics first? And he looked at me. He was like, no, I always do the like, and this is where I got the sing, like, kind of mumble sing it over
Yeah.
until it brings it out of you. And I was like, oh man, like people are passionate about their process.
Yeah. For
I get
sure.
it. So I've heard artists talk about that when they create or listen to music or create art in general, it brings them closer to a higher power or
Hmm.
whatever this thing is we don't understand that's beyond our recognition. Um, Wherever you stand on spirituality, I feel there is something profound outside of ourselves that we tap into when we create or experience music. What is your theory on what this dynamic could be and what it is that we tap into when we experience music, whether it be a collective consciousness, God, or something entirely abstract from that?
I definitely think it's definitely your higher self. That's
Mm,
tapping into your consciousness. Um, yeah.
higher self.
Yeah, I definitely think it's because I always feel like, especially once I finish the song, I feel more confident. I feel more
Mm,
aware of a lot of other things. Very much intuitive, and they say that your higher self is what brings that out of you. Um,
higher self, is that like a dimension of yourself
yeah,
above yourself, or like a guardian angel
yeah, I
situation,
would
or
say a dimension of you.
gotcha.
Um,
Like we could
that's
almost
just
be
more
like a
conscious.
gotcha. I
Yeah,
like that. I've heard like the holographic universe theory where we are almost like a shadow. Like
yeah,
if you think of like a 2D plane, like being the shadow of a 3D plane.
yeah.
So if you think of how you could take like a cube and then that's a 3D object, and then when you cast a light on it, what's casted on the paper is a 2D
It's
plane.
2D. Yeah,
And so if imagine our 4D universe with time being our fourth dimension is actually just a shadow of something even bigger than that,
yeah,
and just like a emergent property of that higher dimension.
yeah.
So maybe that could tie into our higher
No,
self.
yeah, for sure. That
That's
makes a lot of sense. I've
that,
never thought of it like that, but makes makes a lot of sense. I
uh,
definitely believe that everyone has a higher power within themselves.
mhm.
And when we do things that we love or we're that are kind of like our purpose, that's what brings it out.
Yeah.
I believe that.
Oh yeah, our purpose. Yeah. Yeah. I always it feels there's this feeling we get sometimes when we feel like we're on the right track. And I
Yeah,
think it's more than just a ideological construct of what we think is the right track, because sometimes we can do things that society would say tells us, and our friends and loved ones tell us is the right track, and like you're doing great, but it doesn't feel right to us. Like
Yeah.
when everything around you says you're doing great, you're on the right track, but you don't feel that way.
Yeah.
There's something to that. It's like we all have this destiny, and I had heard someone describe almost like there is like it was almost like a form of higher self that helps guide us like as individuals in our way, and uses statistics and probability to
Yeah.
help guide us to where we're supposed to do and how we're supposed to impact the world.
Absolutely.
And that is a definitely interesting way of thinking about it. And it's just I hope we reach some sort of truth
Yeah.
before our time is up here,
Yeah.
because
100%.
it is beautiful not knowing, but I think it's in
Yeah.
our nature
To
to
want to
want
know.
to want to
Yeah.
know.
For
Yeah.
sure. 100%.
But I think what will be most frustrating for us when we finally get there to that understanding is that it might be outside of uh, our cognizance. We won't be able to really understand
Yeah.
the information we're getting. It'll sound simple or something, and I feel like it'll be like a 2-sentence kind of
Yeah.
explanation of the theory of everything, and we'll be like, "Oh, that
Yeah.
doesn't sound right." Uh,
Yeah.
I heard this really, really great quote about a scientific invention, and like the eureka moment. Well, let me see, hopefully I get this right. But there is never whenever there's a great advancement in science,
Mm.
it's never a eureka moment. It's always a that's odd moment.
Yeah.
It's a moment that challenges what we thought was fundamental.
Yeah, for sure.
Something like that changes what we have to rewrite the textbooks now moment.
Yeah.
And those are the moments that you really are challenged. It's not like of course, because we wanted it to be this way.
Yeah.
We thought it would be this way. It's always that's odd.
Yeah, for sure.
That when we put this data set in this data set, that means that there's like 90% of an element in the universe that we can't observe, but we can measure it.
Yeah.
Like dark matter. We have no idea what it is, but
Yeah.
we can measure it. And that doesn't make sense, but there was
Yeah.
that's odd moment, because none of us were ever thinking, well, the universe is made up of this thing that that doesn't interact with matter as
Yeah.
we know it. And so there's,
That's very interesting.
Reflecting on your journey so far, what has been the most rewarding part of being an artist for you?
Honestly, getting paid for it, like just being able to do what I love to do and make a living of some sort off of it. I think that's a blessing. I think a
That's
lot
so
of
real.
people, they have hobbies, but they never get to a point where they can actually make a career out of it, or be professional in it. And I think it's just rewarding every time that I do a show, because it's something that, we go to work every single day, and that's never rewarding.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, I know I'm going to get a check, but so like
Mhm.
whenever I have a show, like I'm literally doing something that I love, like in all aspects. And then I'm also getting rewarded with it by getting paid for
Right.
doing something that I would like to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think that is not talked about enough.
Yeah.
I think it's almost like it's part of our culture to like kind of shy away from talking about that aspect of
Mhm.
like that moment, how great that moment is, like when you get paid the first time as an artist.
Yeah.
I put on a show at Kaiju a few months ago, and I was like happy to be this person for them, but also like kind of heartbroken. There was like some artist that I really respected, seen doing their thing for a while, and like this is the first show I've gotten paid at.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm the first person to pay you. And
Yeah.
they're like, yeah. It's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, no,
And
it's
I remember that being like, I probably literally played 50 plus shows at Spinelli's downtown when I was a kid, and we
Yeah.
got paid in pizza. and like that was enough. We're like,
Yeah,
we know we're
no,
gonna
for
get our
sure.
pizza. We may sell a shirt or something.
Yeah,
But
100%. It's not about the money. It's just I think it's the aspect of it. It's like, damn, like I just poured my heart out because I wanted to,
yeah,
and I got paid for it.
yeah, just the compensation
Yeah,
it's it's kind of like a something we don't talk about because it's like we don't do it because we don't go into music because we want to make money.
yeah.
Like that's because that'd be a terrible idea.
Awful
It's
idea.
a really bad idea, a
Awful.
really bad money making strategy. It's just it just happens to be you get to do something you love,
Yeah,
and what a blessing that is if you can keep the lights on or pay
yeah,
your
for
rent
sure.
while
It's
doing
a
something you
blessing.
love. And like
It's a
that's
blessing.
insane. So you've said, quote, I was always a writer, but I've always been very self-conscious to show people. But in this time of the world, I believe there's a message that needs to be spread. What was the tipping point for you to break out of your shell and share your art with the world?
Um, so I started off as a producer, and I would produce for other people, and here and there I would help them write things or
Mhm.
like help them, like, oh no, like you should do this, or you should say this, like, or you should flow like this or whatever, and eventually like nobody would listen. They'd just be like, yeah, like I'm whatever, you don't know anything, you're just a producer. Anyway, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? And I think it was just the sense of feeling ignored. And I will never forget, I went to a poetry slam. So I started doing poetry before I started writing actual, like doing like lyrics to songs.
Mhm.
And I did this poetry slam, and I had been writing a song when I was like maybe a freshman in high school, I think, maybe eighth grade going into freshman year. And I moved back home from Louisville, and my mom was like, like you should get into poetry slams. Like you've always wanted to write. Um, you're too young to be going out to bars to perform, so let me find you some poetry slams, and we can do that. We can go that route, and if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. And so I started doing that, and I would just see how people reacted towards the words that I was
Mm.
saying, and I was always the youngest, the youngest one there,
Yeah.
little eighth grader. They're like, "Oh, she's getting ready to spit a nursery rhyme," but it would be words that are so like jarring and like they cut so deep that these people that were like 20 years older than me were amazed. And that's what moved me to further it and you know, maybe rap, maybe do that, maybe do this. And so I posted a video on my Instagram in 2018 of me being in my closet, which is where my studio was at the time,
Mhm.
um, of me rapping something. And it went viral on Facebook. Um, there was so many people that were commenting, and like I think the validation is what made me keep going with
Mhm.
it, honestly, because I knew people wouldn't lie. Like, I mean, people lie all the time, but
Yeah.
like people aren't gonna go out of their way to repost something or like something or comment on something if they don't know who you are and if
Yeah.
they don't think it's good,
You can
or
tell people's intentions by how they spend their time.
oh
And if
yeah,
they're spending time with your music, they're not gonna if they
oh
don't
yeah,
like it, they're not gonna spend time with it.
yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, and there might be like certain people that you're close with that'll drop fire emojis or repost it just because
Mhm.
like I fuck with you,
Yeah, of
like I'm gonna
course.
support you. But it was really the strangers, like the people that I'd never seen before ever,
Yeah.
that were just so they just felt the need to tell me how great that I was as a stranger.
Mhm.
And even me, like I support people, but I don't I'm not the type of person that's gonna like pump your head up if I truly don't believe what I'm saying. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like
Yeah.
I could really not enjoy your music, and I might repost it maybe, Probably not, but I, I might like it or whatever if you tell me to. But I'm not gonna go out of my way to tell you how talented you are and how
Yeah.
gifted you are if I don't deep down inside know, or if I don't believe that myself, because I feel like people can tell, like,
Oh yeah.
when you're not being truthful and you're just saying something, to whereas if you really really believe it, it's all in the eyes. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think the validation is what made me kept going, for sure, and made me want to break out of my shell. But it was also a very very rough journey of confidence and not really being confident in myself and being shy and being introverted and being like, oh, I have to post a video every single day. I have to do shows. I have to, But
Yeah.
yeah, it was a rough journey, but here we are.
Here we are. And there's so much that's asked of you as a artist
Yeah,
these days compared to 20 years ago,
yeah,
where as long as artists have been artists, they had to do one thing, and that was be a musician
yeah,
or, be a painter.
yeah,
And now, if you're either of those things today, you can't just be that. You can't
yeah, no,
just be a painter.
yeah,
You have to be a social media manager. You have to be a videographer, a photographer. You have to learn how to use editing tools,
yeah.
and you have
Content
to
creator.
content creation, and so yeah, social media management, and
Yeah,
all these things that don't inherently come with the skill of being a painter or
yeah,
musician. And you're sometimes like artists will tend to be like, I'm very anti like technology. I just
yeah.
want to create my art. But like, it's just no matter where you stand on that,
Hmm.
it's a lot to ask from artists these days, because you have to do everything. You have to do what a team of people did
Yeah,
before to just break through and be seen. You
yeah,
can't just press publish on DistroKid
yeah.
with nothing and not post
Right.
anything and expect anybody to hear except maybe your closest friends who are following you
Yeah,
on there, and they see it on their Spotify. But, oh, you dropped? Okay, I didn't see you
yeah,
post about it.
yeah,
That's
for
that's
sure.
and so it's a lot to ask artists in general these days to do, which is you're
Hmm.
asking them to do everything.
Yeah,
And
it gets harder for sure. Like,
yeah,
especially as you get older, because then it takes so much of your time, and
right, you get
rent's
less and
due.
less of that as you grow
Yeah,
older.
you gotta go to work. You can't, be a content creator for today. You got
Yeah,
work all day.
right.
So yeah, it gets way harder, but I think that's what separates the people that are passionate and do it with purpose, and the people that do it
Yeah,
to get money or gain attention or
yeah,
have some sense of validation in the city that you're in or whatever. Like,
yeah.
you persevere through it whenever you move with purpose, and I feel like I move with purpose, for sure.
Absolutely. Is there anything that you can talk about now that we can expect from you music wise coming up?
Yeah. Right now I'm working on an album currently called Tales of a Tenderhead. Um, which I've been working on for quite a bit. I haven't dropped music in like 3 years. But just trying to maneuver through adulthood and life, and trying to find myself and discover this new entity that I am at 21. So I'm not the same as I was when I was 14 or 15.
Yeah,
I've definitely changed, based on the experiences and the stuff that I've been through from that time to now, and the mistakes I've made. And also trying to, you know, unravel why I am the way I am, as an adult, while also trying to figure out life and, you know, life.
hmm
Should I say more? It's a strong four-letter word.
hmm
But yeah. So I haven't dropped, but I'm definitely looking to drop a project this year. Um, and then also working on another project that I don't want to say the name of yet,
Gotcha.
but you
Oh,
know the
okay. I got you.
name.
That's very
Anyway,
exciting. Okay,
yeah.
cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and insights with us.
Yeah.
I know we're looking forward to seeing where your journey takes you next. And as always, we will listen not only with our ears, but with our hearts. And when we all come together through the beauty of music.
Amen. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me.
Indeed.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely.